what are we looking at here, Mike?
Well, it started when a lady, a local person, came in the museum on a Sunday afternoon and said to me, "Did you hear those screams last night?" Now, she'd been in previously, and she knew that I lived right down the hill from her place. I live down by the river. She lives up on the hill over here. And I had heard some screams in the past, but usually just a little short end of a scream because it would wake me up and I would just hear part of it. And I did hear a tail end of a scream that night as well. So I told her, well, I did hear a little bit of a scream, but nothing to talk about, really. She said, well, we heard some major screams behind our home, and would you mind coming up to the house and maybe looking around? We would appreciate it if you would do that. So, okay, I went up there, and they live way up above a creek. They've got this creek in their backyard, and it must be at least 100-foot drop from where their house is down to the creek. And of course, it's private property down there, and they have a neighbor that's fairly close to where this was also, but neither they nor the neighbor have any idea who built this little structure down there by the creek. Now, there's deadfall trees there. There's absolutely no trail that goes by other than the creek itself, and occasional places where you can see that there's a wildlife trail. And actually there's a couple of wildlife trails on the other side of the creek that seem to converge right in this very area here. So we examined this. I regret I didn't spend a whole lot of time with it. We didn't actually go through it with a fine-tooth comb looking for hair or anything on that level, because it was in the winter and the rain was starting, and we weren't able to get back up there before some pretty heavy rains came. And so during the rainy season, this has a creek right in front of it, about 3 feet in front of it and a little lower. So the creek actually rises up in the winter and passes right through this structure. But what we did notice while we were there was that there was absolutely no debris of any kind associated with this. Now, the most logical explanation for a little structure like this would be either children or a homeless person, considering it's on private property down in an area where there's no pathways and no reason for anybody to be. But in most instances, when you find a homeless camp, you also find garbage. And when you find kids at play, you also find signs of that. And there was absolutely no signs of any kind of human habituation near this structure. No bottle caps, no empty bottles, no empty cigarette packs, no cigarette butts, no pop tops, you know what I'm saying? Nothing. And to back it up further, we are now working in association with another Bigfoot researcher. His name is David Paulides. He's a former San Jose policeman, and we have a strategic partnership going where he has agreed to use his police techniques to interview witnesses and to follow up on some of our Bigfoot reports from the local area. So I gave him a little write-up that I had done on this little stick structure and told him how to get there. Well, he went up there and interviewed some of the folks, talked to the people that run the water company there, and so on and so forth, and did his thing. And then he sent me a full report with photographs, and he was there a whole year after I was, after a winter had gone through, and this thing had still held together quite nicely, even though the creek had been through it during the winter. And he told me that this little structure is very similar. Now, what he did for his book was he went up to Hoopa and interviewed Indians, mostly, on the Hoopa Indian Reservation in Northern California, and he interviewed eyewitnesses and then put their stories in this book. And he said that while he was up in Hoopa, he actually went out on a call and found a structure up there that he said was strikingly similar to this one. He said not only was it constructed of the same sorts of materials, not only was it near a creek and near wild animal trails, but it was actually at the exact same elevation above sea level. And this particular structure, he checked that. This is at 350 feet above sea level, because it's here at the bottom of the valley. or pretty close. We're at 300 feet right here at the museum. Willow Creek in Northern California, by the way, is also 300 feet. But the mountains, of course, around it are much higher. This, and the structure up in Hoopa was also exactly at 350-foot elevation. That's a lot of similarities. So he agreed with me that this might quite well be a Bigfoot blind. We think it's an area where a Bigfoot might sit, wait for deer to go past, and then jump out and grab the deer. And when you're walking up and down the creek on both sides of this thing, you cannot see it. It blends in perfectly with the natural environment, and you have to be within 20 feet of it before you even know it's there at all. So he agreed with me that this might likely be a Bigfoot blind.